Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are really unpacking a fundamental restructuring of global power. We're talking about a pretty radical shift, actually, in defense strategy,
Mhm.
where national security, which, was always the job of the state, is increasingly being, well, outsourced, financed, and driven technologically by private companies.
Exactly. And we're digging deep into the analysis provided by the international observer Tenenbaum
Hmm.
on this,
Right.
because it's more than just like hiring private military contractors, which we've seen before. This is fundamentally different.
How so?
It's about a whole new economic and operational model,
Hmm.
one where private capital, not taxpayer money, pays the upfront cost.
Okay.
And this accelerates the tech arms race,
Hmm.
especially, artificial intelligence.
So our mission today is really to get into those financial drivers, understand the geopolitical weight of this shift.
And the massive risks. We really need to talk about the risks of dependency the U.S. government is potentially walking into here.
Yeah, we want you, the listener, to come away really understanding why this is happening now, and honestly, what it could mean for the future of the nation state itself. It feels that big.
It is. But before we jump into the policy stuff, Tenenbaum provided some really interesting context from where he was recording. Paris, right? Saturday, October 25th.
Yeah, just before those big Argentine elections. And the context he gave, it paints a picture of high stakes politics and vulnerability.
Absolutely. First off, that whole situation with former French President Sarkozy, Tenenbaum really highlighted this.
It's pretty stunning, right? Even though he's appealing his conviction, the judge ordered him straight into solitary confinement.
Yeah, immediate solitary. It just shows, the seriousness of the charges, according to the judge at least.
And Tenenbaum detailed the conditions. I mean, a cell with amenities, sure, but very strict limits. Pre-agreed phone calls only, no cell phone at all.
Right. It really underscores that the rule of law sometimes can still reach the very top.
A stark message. And then, happening almost at the same time in Paris, you had this incredible, almost unbelievable event.
The Louvre robbery.
Yeah.
Just spectacular, audacious.
And the crazy thing, according to Tenenbaum, was the complete lack of information afterwards. When he was recording, still zero idea who did it.
The details were just wild. They used a crane, got in through a window.
But alarms failed. Cameras missed it. How does that even happen at the Louvre?
Exactly. And the thieves just vanished. Poof.
And the value, the official estimate was what, 80 million euros?
Right, 80 million official. But Tenenbaum mentioned this fascinating detail. He'd apparently seen an estimate from ChatGPT.
Wait, seriously? Using AI to value stolen art?
Well, maybe less about the accuracy and more a comment on the vacuum of real information. ChatGPT apparently put the potential value closer to like 500 million euros.
Wow. So in the absence of facts, we turn to AI speculation. That says a lot about the situation itself.
It really does. And Tenenbaum pointed out the media reaction because there were no real facts. Journalists started writing these incredibly detailed articles about, like, the Swedish company that made the crane used in the heist.
Just filling the void with trivia.
Total noise. But it illustrates the point perfectly. Institutional vulnerability, lack of control over information, it leads to chaos and distraction.
Okay, so those examples, a powerful former president jailed, a supposedly secure institution like the Louvre breached so easily, they really do set the stage for talking about national defense, don't they?
Precisely. If that can happen, what does it say about the traditional state model for providing security on a national scale?
Let's get into that. Section 1, this idea of a new financial doctrine in defense, heavily linked by Tenenbaum to the Trump administration's philosophy.
Right. And again, the core concept Tenenbaum emphasizes is moving way beyond just hiring contractors. We're talking about defense capabilities being fundamentally privately financed.
Okay, unpack that. Private financing for, like, fighter jets and intelligence systems. How does that actually work on the ground?
Well, instead of the government spending money directly from the U.S. Treasury, taxpayer money, right now,
Yeah.
in this new model Tenenbaum describes, private financial players, big banks, private equity, they loan the huge sums needed for defense projects. Developing new drones, AI research, infrastructure.
So the government doesn't pay up front
Not immediately. The government basically becomes the client. It defers the cost.
and then repays the loan
Yeah.
later. With interest, presumably quite a lot of interest.
Oh, absolutely. Significant interest over a long period. And this, Tenenbaum argues, aligns perfectly with a certain political mindset, which he particularly associated with Trump.
Which is?
The idea of saving money for the American people today. Avoid the immediate political pain of dipping into the Treasury for massive defense spending.
So it looked good politically in the short term. We got this new tech, didn't raise your taxes today. But isn't that just kicking the can down the road, hiding the real cost?
That's the critique, for sure. Tenenbaum acknowledges it's a two-sided coin. Politically, the win is immediate. It looks fiscally conservative, avoids that tax and spend label.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave that interesting example, the White House function room renovation. Remember that?
The $350 million project.
Yeah, funded entirely by private donations. Specifically, Tenenbaum noted, to avoid using Treasury funds and the potential political blowback.
Right. A clear signal about valuing non-taxpayer funding, even for something largely symbolic, and now that logic is being applied to core national security.
That's the argument. Scale that precedent up massively. And Tenenbaum sees echoes of this philosophy elsewhere, too, with leaders like Milei in Argentina,
Yeah.
giving up perks, using private travel.
The whole politicians shouldn't enrich themselves, guard the people's money narrative.
Exactly that narrative.
Okay, but back to the money. If the government borrows billions from, say, JP Morgan for a drone program and pays it back over 30 years with interest, isn't the total cost vastly higher? Aren't we just making banks incredibly rich?
That's the massive question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who really benefits? Tenenbaum suggests that, yes, the long-term debt grows potentially enormously, but the calculation seems to be that the speed and innovation you gain now, especially in this AI race,
Is worth the long-term cost.
apparently so, in the view of those pushing this. But think about it. Trillions could flow to just a handful of financial institutions over the next couple of decades.
Creating this deep dependency where the banks have a vested interest in continued high defense spending to get their returns.
Precisely. It shifts power away from Congress and the budget process, more towards Wall Street having leverage over defense policy through debt.
So immediate political gain, but a potentially huge long-term shift in power towards private finance, controlling the state's ability to defend itself.
That's the dynamic Tenenbaum lays out.
Okay, so if private finance is the how, let's talk about the why, technology, specifically AI. Tenenbaum seems absolutely convinced this is the core driver.
Unequivocally, he states it pretty bluntly. The core realization driving this privatization is that the state is structurally incapable of generating the advanced AI needed. Full stop.
Why? What's wrong with the state model for AI?
Speed, bureaucracy,
Mhm.
procurement cycles, civil service rules. The private sector iterates constantly, takes risks, fails fast, adapts. Government just can't. Tenenbaum argues that even in places like China, which you'd think could dictate anything,
Yeah.
they still rely heavily on private or quasi-private companies for their cutting-edge AI work.
Yeah.
Seat institutions are just too slow, too rigid for the AI arms race.
So this changes everything about the relationship between government and these tech companies. They're not just suppliers anymore.
Not at all.
Hmm.
They're moving, Tenenbaum says, from being like minor suppliers you can swap out to becoming essential, irreplaceable societal partners.
Because they're not just selling a physical thing like a tank.
Because it's not like buying tanks from RENK or submarines from ThyssenKrupp. They're selling the cognitive ability to wage modern war, the decision-making software, the autonomous systems.
So the government's role shrinks dramatically. Tenenbaum calls it the CEO of defense. What does that actually mean in practice?
It means the state shifts from being the primary operator commanding forces running the show to being more of an administrator or a strategic manager.
A manager, like managing contracts.
More than just admin, Tenenbaum uses the term gerenciation. It implies strategic oversight, managing the whole life cycle. The state sets the goals, the key performance indicators, the ethical lines, manages the risk.
But doesn't finance or build the core tech.
Largely, no. It dictates the needs, but the private sector finances, develops, and often operates the capability. The state becomes the quality control, the strategic director, the risk manager.
And we're already seeing who these key private players are. Tenenbaum specifically named Palantir.
Yeah, Peter Thiel's public company, big data, predictive analytics.
And Andor.
Anduril, which is private, focus on autonomous systems, network drones. These companies offer stuff that traditional defense giants, the Lockheeds or Raytheons, are struggling to pivot to quickly enough.
So it's a different kind of capability they're selling, not just hardware.
Completely different. They're selling the integrated software, the intelligence layer that commands the hardware. It's a much deeper integration than, say, Pratt & Whitney making engines. Important, yes, but transactional. These AI firms are embedding themselves in the military's brain, essentially.
Okay, if the state is shrinking its role to administrator, what does it actually bring to the table in these partnerships? What's its contribution?
Land. Lots and lots of land. Tenenbaum really emphasized this point.
Land. Why is land so important?
Power, energy. These advanced AI systems, the data centers needed to train them, the facilities to test autonomous weapons, they are unbelievable energy gluttons.
Right. They need huge amounts of electricity.
Massive amounts,
Right.
often dedicated infrastructure.
Right.
And the federal government controls vast tracts of land, often in areas with potential power access that it can contribute.
So the government's leverage isn't just policy or money, it's physical space and access to the grid.
That's a key part of it. It's an asset the government has that private companies need. Tenenbaum drew this really interesting parallel to Vietnam in the 90s
Oh, yeah. What happened there?
with their Doi Moi reforms
Mhm.
opening up to foreign investment.
Yeah.
The Vietnamese government didn't have much capital, but they had land. So in joint ventures, they contributed land, seen as their least valuable asset, then while foreign companies brought the cash and tech.
And that land enabled the factories, the infrastructure.
Exactly. It facilitated investment they couldn't fund themselves. Tenenbaum sees the U.S. government doing something similar now, using federal land as its contribution, its equity stake, to enable private sector AI development it can't do or fund alone.
Fascinating. Leveraging dirt and power lines as national assets in the AI age. But this dependency, it sounds incredibly risky.
Oh, the risks are huge.
Yeah.
Tenenbaum paints a pretty stark picture here. The efficiency gains are there, yes,
Mhm.
but the dependency creates potentially catastrophic vulnerabilities.
Because defense needs integration, right?
Yeah,
You can't have 10 different AIs running things.
exactly. Tenenbaum calls that idea a disaster. You need one coherent, integrated system for it to work effectively at speed.
Which forces you to rely on one major provider, or maybe a tiny handful.
And once the state is hooked, as Tenenbaum puts it, on that one system, its leverage just evaporates. The company holds all the cards.
What are the specific nightmare scenarios? What did Tenenbaum list?
Well, first, the obvious one, espionage. But it's layered. Not just spies stealing government secrets, but industrial espionage within the private company, stealing the core AI tech the government now relies on. The contractor becomes a massive intelligence vulnerability.
Okay, that's bad. What else?
Operational risks. What if the company disagrees with government policy or faces its own financial crisis? They could theoretically threaten to withhold crucial software updates, patches, or even new versions.
Imagine that during a crisis. Your defense AI provider just pulls the plug or delays a critical fix.
The state would be crippled, paralyzed. And then there's the money aspect again, price gouging.
Once you're totally dependent on their proprietary system, their maintenance, their experts.
They can charge whatever they want. The state has outsourced its core capability. It has no alternative, no negotiating power. It's locked into potentially exorbitant costs dictated by a private monopoly.
And this dependency affects even basic things the state should be good at, like managing inventory. Tenenbaum used that Tomahawk missile example, right?
Yeah, that was very telling. Zelensky asks for Tomahawks, a missile from the 90s, yeah, but constantly updated, still effective.
And the U.S. response was?
We don't actually have that many spare. Production takes time. If we give too many away, we deplete our own strategic stocks to critical levels.
So even with traditional hardware, the state struggles with that differentiation, the life cycle management. Ensuring stock levels are right, production can meet demand.
Exactly. It's failing even there. Now imagine trying to manage the life cycle of a single, indispensable AI software system run by a private monopoly that is accelerating its own development every few months.
It seems almost impossible. If you can't manage a 30-year-old missile stock, how do you manage that?
That's the frightening question Tenenbaum raises.
Mhm.
The level of management required is exponentially higher, and the state seems unprepared.
Okay, let's zoom out. How does this U.S. model stack up globally? Tenenbaum compared it to other major players, right?
Yeah, he laid out the different approaches. China, for instance. It's a hybrid model. You have private tech giants like Huawei deeply linked with the military.
But under tight government control.
Extremely tight. Tenma mentioned Jack Ma's temporary disappearance as the ultimate example. The party's control is absolute.
Does that work for innovation, though?
Tenenbaum argues no, not really. That dictatorial fear-based approach actually stifles the risk-taking and iterative failure needed for true AI breakthroughs. Scientists are scared to fail. It's causing China problems in the AI race, he believes.
Interesting. What about Europe?
Europe has big private arms makers, Thales, Leonardo, Rheinmetall. But the key difference, Tenenbaum points out, is that the government finances the operations. The state holds the purse strings.
So, private execution but public funding.
Mostly, yes.
Yeah.
Israel is another hybrid, with companies like Elbit and state-owned firms, but operating under unique constant pressure.
So the real innovation, the disruptive part, is the U.S. model.
According to Tenenbaum, yes. The private sector financing the government's defense needs. That's the game changer, putting the U.S. on a different path, structurally, from Europe or China.
And this path, Tenenbaum predicts, leads to some pretty radical shifts in power overall, beyond just defense.
Absolutely. He forecasts that global tech companies, think NVIDIA, Google, maybe others, could become more powerful economically and technologically than many nation-states.
Wow. More powerful than countries.
Potentially. He even floated the idea they might issue their own virtual currencies that could end up being seen as, quote, more serious or better managed than the dollar, especially given state debt issues.
That's a huge claim. What happens to the state in that scenario?
It shrinks. Tenenbaum sees the state, in terms of its size and operational footprint, potentially diminishing significantly, becoming maybe just a minimal force acting primarily as an arbitrator or a judiciary.
Why would it shrink so much?
Because, Tenenbaum argues, if AI and these powerful private entities actually start delivering on efficiency-solving problems like poverty, housing, infrastructure, providing labor, the state's traditional role as service provider diminishes. It becomes more of a referee in a game played by private giants.
Which leads to his critique of current governance, Congress, laws. He seems pretty skeptical.
Highly skeptical. He questioned the relevance of legislatures passing thousands of laws that are completely detached from the technological reality.
Like the European attempts to regulate AI.
Exactly. Trying to freeze AI progress or demanding transparency into the black box, demanding to know how the AI reached a decision. Tenenbaum used that pig in, sausage out analogy. You feed data in, you get a decision out. But the internal workings of a truly complex neural network are often opaque, even to the people who built it. If you force it to be transparent in that way, it might break, or you lose the competitive edge. The regulations are trying to grasp something they can't fundamentally control or understand.
And the speed makes it worse, this acceleration problem.
That's the killer point. AI isn't just fast, it's accelerating its own rate of progress. It gets faster at getting faster.
And legislatures operate on human timescales, years for debate, deliberation.
Right. By the time they pass a law, the technology has moved miles ahead. Tenenbaum argues they're stuck debating irrelevant ideologies while the ground shifts beneath their feet.
And this disconnect is most dangerous, he thinks, when it comes to jobs. The AI labor crisis.
Yes, this is the immediate, massive societal impact Tenenbaum sees governments utterly failing to address. AI isn't just automating factory work anymore, it's hitting white-collar jobs.
The middle of the employment pyramid. Lawyers, accountants, managers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A huge swath of the professional class is vulnerable now. And Tenenbaum believes the state is sleepwalking. Instead of preparing society for potentially massive job losses, figuring out UBI or new social structures, rethinking education,
What are we doing instead?
debating, in his words, racism and nonsense regulations. Culture war distractions, basically.
Yeah.
Ignoring the fundamental economic disruption that's already underway and accelerating.
So, huge existential questions about the future of work, purpose, citizenship, and they're not really on the agenda.
Largely ignored, according to Tenenbaum, which is setting society up for a massive shock when the full impact hits.
Okay, let's connect this back to current events. How did Tenenbaum see these dynamics playing out in recent global flashpoints, like the U.S. Navy in the Caribbean?
Right, the USS Gerald Ford deployment, a massive carrier strike group. Officially, the mission was busting 5 filthy barges with cocaine.
Which sounds disproportionate.
Completely. In Tenenbaum's view, deploying a nuclear carrier, the most powerful ship in the world, for a few drug boats, he read it very differently. As a clear warning, a codazo, a nudge aimed squarely at China and Russia.
A warning about what?
About U.S. dominance in its own backyard. By putting the Ford near Venezuela, a Russian-Chinese ally, the U.S. is signaling, challenge us elsewhere, like the Pacific or Ukraine, and we can immediately make life very difficult for your friends and interests right here in Latin America. It's leverage.
And this ties into his view of the region's instability,
Yeah.
Colombia, Mexico.
He was critical of Colombia's President Petro, seeing his actions as ineffective, with elections looming that the right seemed poised to win.
And Tenenbaum made some strong claims there.
He did, labeling Petro an assassin regarding alleged involvement in judge killings, though clarifying he wasn't seen as a trafficker. Again, we're reporting Tenenbaum's analysis here, not endorsing it. His point was regional instability.
But the real danger he felt wasn't state actors like Venezuela as much as
The Mexican cartels. Immense power, operating outside state control. So, Tenenbaum suggested a show of force against Venezuela, framed as counter-narcotics, is really a message to the cartels, and maybe even indirectly to China, about stability in the U.S. sphere.
What about Russia? The canceled Trump-Putin meeting, oil sanctions.
Tenenbaum speculated, and he stressed it was speculation that the sudden chill came after Putin potentially walked back a promise made in a previous call with Trump.
Angering the U.S. administration.
That was his theory, leading to the cancellation and then the swift imposition of serious oil sanctions, a significant blow to Russia, especially heading into winter. It shows how quickly personal dynamics at the top can translate into major geopolitical moves.
And throughout all these flashpoints, the underlying reality is the changing nature of warfare itself, right? Back to the tech.
Absolutely. Tenenbaum circled back to the soldier. He stated it as practically inevitable. Robots, autonomous systems, they'll make up 80 to 90% of military forces within like 3 to 4 years.
That soon. 80 to 90%.
That's his prediction. It's not science fiction anymore.
And the evidence is already there. Ukraine.
Yeah, he cited estimates that 80% of casualties in the Russia-Ukraine war are now caused by drones and remotely operated systems.
Yeah.
Humans are increasingly targets, not operators, on the front line.
So the argument that you still need humans for the important decisions.
Tenenbaum called that absolute madness. Human reaction time, emotional responses, susceptibility to fatigue and error, compared to AI's processing speed. There's no contest in many combat scenarios. The human is becoming the weak link.
So wrapping this up, the picture Tenenbaum paints is transformative and maybe a little terrifying. Defense is being privatized, financed by banks, driven by AI. The state can't build itself.
Right. The state becomes the CEO of defense, an administrator, a risk manager, but it's hooked, dependent on private monopolies, facing huge risks, espionage, supply cuts, price gouging.
And this isn't just about defense. It's a potential model for how society itself might be restructured, with global companies potentially eclipsing nation-states.
And the state shrinking to maybe just a referee, which leads to that final, really provocative question Tenenbaum left hanging.
Which is?
If AI, run privately, starts solving the big problems, poverty, housing, labor, and these global companies are more powerful than governments anyway.
Yeah.
What is the fundamental purpose of the nation-state in that future? What defines it?
A huge question to think about. What is the state for, if not those things?
Exactly. Something for you, the listener, to definitely mull over. Meanwhile, Tenenbaum himself is already on the move again, France to Thailand in 5 days, apparently. Always chasing the next angle.
Well, we encourage you to keep exploring these massive changes. This isn't just military strategy. It cuts to the core of governance and society.
Absolutely. Until the next deep dive, keep digging,